when I spoke to him on the car, he'd made it to Helensvale. We have a number of starred items, and I'm interested in unstarring 6.3 and 6.10 and 7.1. Is anybody interested in unstarring anything else? Is anybody interested in starring anything? Councillor Patterson, do you think we need 6.8 unstarred? No, as in, would you like it to be starred?
It can be starred, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, thanks.
Rightio, thank you. So I've got the confirmation of the minutes. Would anybody like to move the confirmation of the minutes? Moved Councillor Pauline Young, seconded Councillor Donna Gates. All in favour? Carried. Are there any conflict of interest declarations? Okay, thank you. So I'll move the start items of 5.1, 6.1, 6.2, 6.5, 6.6, we'll star 6.8 and 6.9. So I'll move those. Seconded Councillor McDonald. All in favour? Carried. Councillors, we've had a request from the Director if we could move 7.4 forward on the agenda, predominantly because of how many officers are involved in that matter. So if anybody doesn't have any objections, move Councillor Pauline Young into close. Would anybody like to second that? Seconded Councillor Darren Taylor. All in favour? And we're moved into close because of the budgetary So let's just deal with the closed session items first, and we'll deal with them in order. So 7.1. Yep. 7.1, so I'm happy to move that, seconded by Councillor Pauline Young. All in favour? Carried. 7.2, I'm happy to move that. Anybody like to second it? Selling land for overdue rates and charges. Yep, Councillor Hamill. All in favour? Carried. 7.3, Councillor newsletter distribution, moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Pauline Young. Would anybody like to say anything publicly about that? Indeed. So I'll take that as closed.
Okay.
Or no?
Just that it's important that we have a standard approach across all councillors, and so that there is a standard communications approach, and this will enable that.
Okay. And I'm going to call a division. All in favour? So it's everybody. Councillor Owen-Jones, Councillor Hamill, Councillor Gates, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Balen-Lumsden, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Pauline Young, Councillor McDonald. I thank our visitors for their attendance and their spirited input. Right. Councillors, 6.3 is the Audit and Risk Committee. Yeah, okay, let's do that as well. 7.4. Move, Councillor Patterson.
Through the chair, I've sent some revised recommendations.
That's a good idea. Noted.
This was where you wanted to move the $10 billion for light rail, just to refresh your memory, Councillor Jones. Are we in open?
We are in open.
Through the chair, would you mind just scrolling down just a little bit further, please?
What else? Is there something below 7?
Within the email I sent through, there was also a table to reflect the allocations within the Strategic Priorities Reserve.
Okay. Rightio. So the change to the recommendation. So the change to the recommendation will identify in future reports the amount allocated for the relocation of the Oxenford Pony Club in the Strategic Reserve, and it'll also show an allocation of funds in the Strategic Reserve towards light rail stage 3, and then the balance will sit in the Strategic Priority Reserve as unallocated. Councillor Gates.
I'm sorry, Chairman. The only question I have was, my recollection was there was only $900,000 that was allocated, and I don't know where that $7,966, that's possibly an amount left over for the equestrian relocation, but it was only 900.
So through the chair, 900 grand was the amount that was requested by officers to be re-provided. I went back and read the council resolution, and it suggested that the full amount, which is 907,966, be transferred.
Okay, thank you. Very thorough.
Nailed it. Right.
Could we just scroll to the updated table, please?
That's correct.
And so in that bucket, I'm sorry, I just can't see the whole thing on the same page, obviously, but is there a line there that says unallocated?
So the unallocated is essentially, through the chair, if you could...
We can just go back to the table,
If you could go back to the table, please.
And show the yellow. Yeah, thank you.
Through the chair, the unallocated line is now 25 million, 25,043,979. Everything else is allocated to
Thank you.
a specific purpose.
And it also provides for the underpinning of the next year's budget as well.
That's correct.
So if I can scroll to the top of that table, does it show it there? Where is the underpinning, the 16 mil?
That is already reflected in the body of the report.
Outside of the
It's
strategic reserve.
outside of the table, but that unallocated portion can be used in future budgets.
Thank you. Right, so I'll move it. Would somebody like to second it? Seconded Councillor Gates. All in favour? Carried. What's that? How long's that been going on for? 7.3. So I unstarred this just to, I wanted to make the councillors aware that that there was a discussion that was had in particular with the external members of the committee who were particularly interested as to where the internal audit position sat on the strategic 6.3, yeah, and I just wanted everybody to be aware that there was some concern in regards to the current structure and where the internal auditor is, and they had effectively asked that the CEO attend the next meeting to flesh that out, which I just wanted to confirm with Luke that was on the cards.
Chair, that's correct. So our intent is to address that particular aspect, in particular around maintaining that independence for our internal audit function with some of these structure changes, and bring that back to the next Audit and Risk Committee.
Yep. Right, yeah. So I'll move it, and Councillor Pauline Young can second it. All in favour? Carried. Procurement Policy and Contract Manual Review, 6.4. Thank you, Luke. Councillor Gates.
I don't want to interrupt. Does anyone want to speak to this? I just had a question.
Let's ask a question.
Okay. I made an error and I did my first governance agenda when it was distributed for the meeting that was cancelled. So it was to be on the 14th of September, and because of the Queen's passing, that meeting never went ahead. But because I was not going to be in the city for a couple of days, I had gone through that agenda because the new agenda had not been released. So I had questions about this item from the first report, which is very different from the report we ultimately received. And so I wanted to know why the information in the first report was excluded, because my particular questions related to things that were in the tables of the first report.
Through the chair, yes, due to the Queen's passing, and we had to delay bringing this item to council or to committee. During this time, we are trying to work with the 1CP program and to streamline a lot of the processes that we currently do. So we took the contract manual to the CEO to authorise the changes that were proposed, and he has been delegated that authorisation from council.
Okay, well, given there was information in the first report, I would like to ask, on page 155 of the original report, it specifically mentioned the incoming sponsorship policy, the incoming and outgoing sponsorship agreements, and it suggested that incoming sponsorships were removed due to the incoming sponsorship policy being adopted, but I didn't believe that it had been adopted. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my thought was that we had a workshop at which we did not adopt the incoming sponsorship policy. We had a number of concerns that I'm not aware of us having reviewed.
Through the chair, the incoming sponsorship policy is listed as an adopted policy in on council's records in our intranet site. So I would have to take that on advice.
Okay, and as well as the public art policy, I wasn't sure that that had
Yeah.
been adopted.
So through you, Mr Chair, Councillor Gates, the last workshop that you did attend, you're correct, so that's been paused and we're currently working through how we come back to councillors and also consult with councillors. I remember Councillor Corwell had a lot of questions that day, I think Councillor Tozer did, and I remember you did as well, so that hasn't gone any further from that day a few months ago.
And the public art policy, have we adopted a revised public art policy?
To not do it.
Well, I thought we had concerns with that as well. So, and I'm sorry to raise those, but it was just because they were in the original report and then they disappeared. I couldn't understand why they disappeared.
So, yes, so through the chair, the public art requirements, the only changes or the only reason that it is listed separately is because of the local benefits component of the contract manual. So with artists, it's more an alignment to the local area rather than physically being living in the local area. So there is a nuance there. So that's why we reference the public art separately, or we highlight the requirements for public art.
Okay. No further questions, Chair.
Did anybody else have any questions regarding procurement? Would anybody like to move the procurement? Going once. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, with the recommendation, which is to accept the changes, but I don't know if I'm not reading it correctly, but it effectively reads like the changes are not highlighted. Are the changes highlighted and I'm just missing them?
Through the chair, you are looking at the changes to the procurement policy, not the
The
contract
whole
manual.
thing is the change.
They are two documents
Okay.
required under legislation. One is the policy, which is the short document. The contract manual is a subsequent document required under legislation. So they are separate. So we are bringing to you the actual policy, the policy document for you to look at those changes.
So isn't there an existing policy that's
Correct.
being changed?
Correct?
So have you shown us the changes?
I have.
Okay, so where are the changes?
They're in the attachment.
No, all that is in the attachment is a draft for a review. I don't know what the changes are.
So that draft review has tracked changes.
Oh, well, I can't see any.
I think through you,
Maybe there's very, very few changes and I just haven't picked them up.
Through you, Mr Chair, I think there might have been the attachments haven't got the track changes, but we can take that on notice. We're happy to send out the track change and the current proposed.
So are we being asked to accept changes, but the attachment doesn't show us the changes?
The attachments that I provided was a track change
I'm not
version.
asking what you provided, I'm asking what we have. How can we adopt changes when we don't know what the changes are? I don't think we can do it.
It looks like the same attachment, the attachment one is the same. Two, basically. So we'll
Councillor
send that
Gates.
out as soon as this minute.
Are you going to tell me that in your original?
No, I'm not going to do that. But I think that's why there was a reluctance to move and second this item, because I didn't have a confidence that I was across the changes because they are not tracked in the document that
We haven't been
I
given them.
was looking at. So in order to do our job, we really do need to see what's changed and
Yeah. So I think this one needs to be deferred.
So we'll send that out this afternoon. The changes are included on page 35 in terms of the discussion piece, but document.
So through the chair, I'm happy to talk you through the changes at this time, acknowledging that you'll receive a full copy with the track changes
Sounds good.
Sounds
Yep.
good.
If you
Chairman,
could do that,
happy with
please.
that?
So the key change is in the performance measures. In the current policy, one of the performance measures is procurement savings. Given that the volatility of the market at the moment and the pressures we're receiving, it's quite difficult for estimations of contract value to go out to bring in a contract savings measure. So we are proposing during this time that we remove that measure. The other changes are updated to include changes to council policies.
You want a question about the first change? Yep.
Oh, sorry.
So my question is actually just to kind of clarify my understanding. So my understanding is that traditionally we've gone with this fixed price contracting kind of arrangement where
Correct.
there is very little fluidity for a contractor to change or deviate from the contracted price as they're delivering the project. And some of the feedback that I've got from some contractors is that, and some of the market is that they are less willing to bid for council work as a result of not being able to respond in an agile way to changing price and market fluctuations. We're now moving to a system where we're not so wedded to fixed price contracting, and that's what is. Am I reading what you've said correctly?
Through the chair, yes, you are, councillor.
Great.
So we are doing more open book transacting with our contractors. At the time of tender, there is a baseline price for fluctuating commodities such as steel, concrete,
Yep.
labour. Through the term of the contract, they will bring to us their proposed variation, and it is an open book scenario.
So currently, the perception from some contractors that I've talked to is that they're unwilling to bid for council projects because there isn't enough fluidity for them and they don't want to have to carry the risk.
Correct.
But that means we get less bidders for work. It does mean we get a fixed price, but it also means we get less people and sometimes there's less competition. The risk to us by making this change is that, we might end up seeing changes to the contract price that escalate, but we'll also get more bidders, so hopefully we'll start from a lower point. Am I?
Yes, through the chair, you are correct.
Yeah. Okay.
The other actions that we are taking is we are liaising with industry bodies and taking on board the feedback around the perception of contracting with council,
Yeah.
how onerous our contract documents are,
Yes.
how we place a lot of special conditions in our contract documents which are not accepted, and also the limits of the liability and the insurance and the risk.
Okay.
So it is a complex process.
These changes are trying to make us more easy to deal with in the marketplace, but also the risk is that there might be fluctuations in price after we've contracted,
Yes, through the chair,
which
that's
isn't the
correct.
case right now.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So if I may, through the chair, some of the changes to the contract manual that were authorised by the CEO are also to enable some of that more fluid transacting with our contractors.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Councillor Gates.
Thank you. I appreciate where this is intended to go, but what springs to mind is Kira. And the cost overruns on that project were quite very, very significant. So is there anything and that was a tender process under the old rules, but council still had to step forward and put in many, many dollars to complete that project. So I'm just wondering how that happened and what the parameters of that tender were that required council to pick up the tab rather than the tenderer who'd submitted a price that we accepted. So I get wanting the flexibility, but I don't like at all what we had to do in regards to Kira.
So through the chair, councillor, my understanding of Kira was that because it was a heritage building, as we started to do the works to bring that pavilion up to the current state, some things were discovered along the way. So that's really a latent condition on a heritage building, which is quite unusual for the work that we normally do.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Paulino.
Through the chair, thank you. Could I also ask if we're going to those performance measures there, is that going to decrease the necessity to have a 40% contingency in some of these contracts? Are we going to be able to, I think realistically, you know, the volatility of the market, they're going to lock things in, but I think some of our past contracts have been 40% contingency. So are we going to perhaps get a more level playing field there if we're going down almost like a cost plus?
Yes, so through the chair, yes, we are reviewing contingencies as part of this ongoing work.
Thank you.
To enable it to be easier for contractors to contract with us and also for you as a council to have more visibility
Thank you.
around the risk for supply chain issues.
Thank you. You want to carry on?
Certainly. The other changes through the policy, we have, through the chair, simplified wording. We've also had to update in line with changes to directorate names, branch names. So they are minor administrative changes in the wording. And pretty well, that's the major changes
Thank
in
you.
the policy document.
Thank you.
In the contract manual itself, the ones that were authorised by the CEO. So yes, we will review the public art policy. Sustainable procurement, the Mayor in Resolution G211203-002 requested for a sustainable procurement policy, and under the legislation we have one procurement policy, so we formed a committee with key stakeholders across the organisation to bring in more wording around sustainability and the environment and bring the language up to the current requirements. So that was reviewed in line with water and waste. And the circular economy. The environmentally friendly products as well. Financing arrangements were removed as not relevant to the procurement policy. That firmly falls in the remit of the finance area under the Chief Financial Officer. We had a KPMG review of contract management, and the requirement or the recommendation was to stand up a governance group which offers a gated review. So that is introduced into the into the contract manual. So that is a forum for gateway approval of procurement strategies, significant contracting plans prior to market release, sourcing strategies, negotiated contract variations, and contract management issues. So that again is making sure that the offers that we're putting to market are relevant to the market that we're approaching. There was a requirement in our contract manual for a request for information process, which was separate to an expression of interest. They've now been combined. There was no legislative requirement for us to separate requests for information processes. So this is also, again, making it easier for us to engage with business and understand what the market can offer us. And from that, we will form our requirements and engage contractors. The register of pre-qualified suppliers, again, we have combined that under a topic, a heading called contract arrangements, and that was to allow us to stand up a new form of contract called framework agreements, so that contractors can see an ongoing piece of program of works, and they will bid to become part of that framework agreement. And then again, streamlining that process of engaging them so that they can be engaged by the business in a shorter time frame. So not committing themselves to larger pieces of work. We've taken the feedback from the market that it's quite difficult for them in these times to price ongoing 2 years worth of work. So these panel agreements allow us to more fluidly engage with the market. Termination of contracts was included. We've now said that you need to refer that to legal services. We don't believe that a council officer should make a determination whether a contract should be terminated or not without seeking legal advice. And the contract variation management. So we've taken some of the requirements for the onerous approval processes away. If it is non-discretionary, which means that it is only the superintendent that the principal has nominated to manage the contract, makes a determination that a contract should be varied for a latent condition or otherwise, that there is absolutely no value to anybody else. The procurement area reviews it, But for us to enable the contract to continue with the works and not hold up, then we need that to be handed over to the superintendent to be able to enact those latent condition variations.
Sorry, one more question. The standard expenditure approval limits that are listed on page 108, have they always been at those levels?
Through the chair, yes, they have. There's no
No
change.
change to that. So does that mean that delegations exist for each of those people to approve those amounts without reference to council?
Through the chair, yes, it does. It requires them to engage a contracts and procurement officer from an approved budget. And then that comes
So
in.
the budget's been approved by council for any of those projects and those delegations then exist?
Through the chair, yes, it has.
Thank you.
Still want to.
Well, Chairman, I felt that we have received a full explanation and that it could be adopted today, but with the not redacted, but the changes distributed in the meantime, and if there were any issues, they could be raised at full council. So I would foreshadow, since it's been moved and seconded, I would foreshadow the office.
Shadow, the move is happy to accept.
Okay?
Quick, that's exactly what I was going to do anyway. I'm happy to move it, the actual original item after.
Okay,
What was that?
that's all right. I'll just step back.
And through the chair, councillors, we'll send the attachment out straight after committee. So.
Rightio. You're not going to speak to it, are you, Councillor Hamill? Excellent. All in favour? Carried. Councillor, I reckon I seconded it. Okay, let's do the draft annual report 21-22. Sarah, I'd let you speak to it, but I'm first going to ask if anybody has any questions, because I reckon you're going to tell me it's the annual report. Councillor Baldwin Lumsden.
Just, Chair, there's one little one on page 185. I just noticed Division 8's referring their emails to Division 1.
Good idea.
That was, don't know if that's intentional or if a typo, but that was just
Good thinking.
one thing I picked up there.
Clever.
Getting the work done, though. It'd actually get done.
You just-
That was the only thing I noticed, yeah, that was.
Right. Any other questions? Well, with that, Councillor Gates, were you going to move it? I thought that Councillor Baldwin Lumsden should move it, having done the minor change. You can second it. So I did have a question in regards to the former CEO left the building in March 21 and Tim started in January and Joe was the acting CEO for a period of time. I was just wondering whether or not we could give some consideration to having some words to at least acknowledge Joe's period of service as the acting CEO. But I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. 5 months, 6 months, yep.
If I can just say, I think nothing against Joe, but I think it's just normal practice that the CEO at the time of the end of the financial year is the one that features. I think that's just...
No, I don't have a problem in the feature. To me, it was just, so in either of the commentaries from either the CEO or the Mayor, I just thought a passing acknowledgement of Joe having stepped into the breach for the period of time would have been okay, but I can't influence them with what they want to write. So are there any other queries or questions in regards to the annual report? So it won't be printed, is that correct, Sarah?
Yes, it hasn't been printed for a number of years and distributed. It's going to be obviously available online, but the focus is really going to be on social media in terms of identifying those major developments during the year and the major initiatives that have been delivered.
Thank you. Ryan, did you want to speak to it? Did you want to speak to it?
The year quite concisely and clearly.
Right, all in favour? Carried. 6.10, Community Grants Report, Citywide Grants Program. Good luck, Matt. Matt, did you want to say some words before there were any questions?
No, I'm good.
Excellent. Councillor Tozer.
My question is just on page 418, which is right at the start of the report, it kind of talks about the Mudgeeraba Show Society and how they were allocated a $30,000, which was after about 10 years of being allocated $25,000. We lifted that, having regard for them being well managed and also the growing costs of running a show. And I noticed in the report that we've reverted back to the $25,000 allocation, notwithstanding their application for 60. My question is probably to the chair or to the councillors, is there a view that we can potentially acknowledge that, long-term commitment to the city and not go back to the previous decade with their allocation? I appreciate $60,000 might have been a bold and ambitious application, but I am quite keen to recognise the increasing costs of running major events in the city and also acknowledge the Mudgeeraba Show Society's the feedback from councillors in the recent confidential conversation, the general support that I've had expressed from councillors for the Mudgeeraba Show. At the very least, it would be wonderful if councillors could support at least a consistent allocation of $30,000, but I would clearly like to see that in a multi-year deal subsequent to this year start to grow so we can...
So Matt, the first question is are there any unallocated funds?
Yes, through the chair, there is a small buffer in the allocation. I will just touch on the reason why it's at 25,000.
Before you do that,
Yep.
could you also advise whether or not does the committee have any constraints in changing officer recommendations?
No, not at all. So all of the applicants that are listed here today are considered eligible applications, and eligible applicants, they didn't get this far if they weren't considered eligible. So the quantum of funds can be altered today.
Then do you know how, so you can explain why you said 25 and a check?
Yep.
Do you know how many volunteers are involved with the Mudgeeraba Show?
I do have that handy if you'd like me to pull it out. But I'll just touch on the quantum of funds. So the Mudgeeraba Show Society Incorporated are included as part of the work stream program that's undergoing at the moment through the One City project. So there's a review, a strategic governance review, which includes a number of these organisations to review the funding arrangements, particularly larger scale funding arrangements on an ongoing basis with the view to enter into longer term arrangements with them to give them security going forward. Similar with the Gold Coast Show, the Sporting Hall of Fame, Sports Gold Coast, Surf World down in Currumbin. There's a few of them that are involved in that, which is where we've landed on one-off funding arrangements this time round, pending the outcome of that strategic review. That's the commentary around that, but I'll just pull up the number of volunteers that are in the group.
Speak to that.
So through the chair, so the information that's been provided to us through the application is that there's 100, round figure of 100 volunteers involved.
And on page 426, are you able to tell me how many volunteers are involved in the 10 Cent Tom organisation?
I certainly can if you have the application number handy by any chance.
CW22-23-048.
The answer is 10.
Okay. So we could. Councillor Tozer?
I think I don't want to advocate for the Mudbrush Society by seeing someone else lose out. I think there is actually surplus funds
maybe
here.
there's commonality in what you're trying to achieve and maybe what the rest of the committee
the point I'm trying to get at is
interested
at the moment there is a review of these several organisations, and I think there might be a perception that if we reduce funding from 30 to 25 this year, it might be thought that they are not being well managed, and I don't believe that to be the case. I don't believe that to be the perception. And so I'm just conscious that I would love to see somewhere between 30 and 40 allocated, but at the very least, we should at least maintain the funding whilst this review is ongoing so people don't perceive that there is some sort of penalty for how they're being
So Councillor
reviewed.
Tozer, to the committee, is there support for an increase of, say, $5,000 to the Mudgeeraba show? Okay,
Thank you.
So that's
great.
Let's have that as a working something. Councillor Young.
And thank you, and through the chair, and I do this every year, Surf Life Saving. I think when they were on a funding agreement, it was like 150, 160 odd thousand a year that went into the southern Gold Coast beaches and then the northern Gold Coast beaches. We have a huge reliance on safety for our tourism, and that, not just our tourism, but for our locals, for encouraging people to be safe in the ocean and that, and to see a reduction down to 25,000 on two accounts there and then 10,000 over the page. For me, it's a huge reputational risk within our city. And when you say number of volunteers, I'd like the number of volunteers for Surf Life Saving here on the Gold.
23058 and 063.
Through the chair, so the South Coast branch has 10,692 members. And I'll just pull up the Point Danger branch. And 6,222 for the Point Danger branch. Just adding on that though, that funding level is consistent with the one-off funding that was provided last year as a bridging amount. And they have submitted a number of applications. So the two regional bodies being South Coast and Point Danger, as well as Surf Life Saving Queensland as a state branch. And there were a number of applications that referred to the discretionary grants program as divisional clubs.
Well, my comment back on that one, Matt, is that if you are a volunteer standing on a beach for 6 or 7 hours a day and then you have to come off the beach and start rattling the tin or selling chocolates to actually fund that shortfall that we've done when they're in on agreements, funded agreements, and we're looking at $150,000, $160,000 a year, and now we've dropped it down to say $50,000. 16,000 volunteers on the Gold Coast, and we're not supporting the fact that, because I, for one, can tell, and conflict of interest or whatever, I have stood there, and then when you've got to go out there, and I'm sure Councillor Caldwell's the same, and there's other councillors the same, to rattle a tin when you've stood on the beach or to stand at Brisbane Airport to try and collect funds for shortfalls, and now we're reducing what used to be in the past a funding agreement down to a third, almost a quarter of what they've used to receive. I find it, knowing that the increase of people on our beaches within the city, the public exposure, the reputational damage, I'm gobsmacked.
Might just provide some feedback if that's okay, Chair.
Sure.
So just on that one, we obviously had a challenging time coming to this final outcome in that there were 100 applications received, and it's the first time we've run the program this way with the special funding category stream. The recommendation's been put before you today is essentially allocating a third of the whole bucket to 5 groups, 2 of which are surf life saving. So 100,000 out of the 300 odd thousand is going between the 5. We tried to come to sort of the middle ground to make sure that all applicants received something. I think in total there's 6 applicants, eligible applicants, that are receiving no funding. But it's a matter for council to decide.
Any other surf life saving questions? And I think we'll pause it there, but I think that we definitely hear what you say. Councillor Patterson. Okay, next. So on page 423.
No.
Are you on page 423?
No.
Okay, excellent. Can I ask about what ARHG is, which is 073?
Through you to the chair, or to yourself. So my understanding with that particular application, that is a similar community event that is proposed to be held at, I think, Metricon Stadium off the top of my head. It's a disability inclusion event that they've proposed.
Okay. Councillor Patterson. So.
Well, first of all, Festival of Fun sounds like a lot of money in comparison to, you know, Mudgeeraba show for what it is and other things, but anyway. Okay, so my question is regarding 041, Australian Anti-Ice Campaign.
What page?
Page 429. I've got my wrong glasses on, so I've got to keep taking these on and off. Driving me nuts.
Yep.
Last year, there were significant concerns about the governance of this group, which had us not allocate funds. Could you tell me what's changed?
Yes, through the chair. So I believe that this particular group has received funds in a number of different community grant program streams in the last 12 months. I believe that they did receive funding, albeit a small amount, through this program in January last year. They are an eligible group. Yeah.
So I think that there was a concern, well, I know that there was a number of concerns. I have a number of concerns having engaged and worked with them. I know the local state MP who has had a lot to do with them, who's certainly very focused on supporting people with drug dependency, has an issue. And I'm pretty surprised that they get a rating of 65% and then a group like Australian Institute for Intergenerational Practice don't. So that was my other question, why their rating was so low. But I haven't heard a reason why you think it's changed other than they've got some money.
Through the chair, so as part of this evaluation process to get to this point, there's the initial, really the first question is, are they an eligible organisation and is it an eligible project that's being proposed? The answer to those two questions was yes. It then goes to the evaluation panel to answer a series of questions which computes to a score at the end, which is the 65%. So there's 5 people that's on the panel. I'm not one of them. I'm just here today to deliver the report, but that's essentially how it gets to that point. We certainly want to make some progress in terms of the policy itself to provide a bit more clearer guidance in terms of how we get to today. But the status quo with the policy is it's an eligible organisation with an eligible project proposal.
Okay. And do you happen to know about 110 and why they were given a low scoring application? The Institute for Intergenerational Practice. It's quite new, but they're doing pretty considerable work.
Through the chair, I am aware of this particular application, and I understand that they did receive some whole of city funds from the mayor for a separate proposal forum. So I think it was really just a balancing of the competing demand for the funds that we had available. So as I sort of mentioned, a third of the funds went to the 5 at the top, and because of their proposal, where it fell with the scoring, we were sort of limited in the scope because the policy does outline certain percentages are within certain limits.
Okay.
Not necessarily a reflection of the actual proposal itself.
Okay, so it may have been that lower rating could be a reflection of, we know that they've already got funds and so we're giving them a lower rating.
In some respects, it's to do with value for money. So there's a series of questions, the number of participants that they're proposing for their event versus Surf Life Saving, for example, that has tens of thousands. So it's just the competing demands
or
for the funds.
Or Anti-Ice, that has 3.
Or the Surfers Paradise Budgerigar Society.
Which one was that? Oh, sugar.
So Matt, my question to you is, do you know if the panel had much regard to what might be divisional allocations? So, for example, Surfers Paradise Budgerigar Society?
Yes, through the chair. So in regard to that particular application, I understand that they're working through changing their organisation name through the state government, through their incorporated association. So that particular group actually isn't based in Surfers Paradise. It's the Gold Coast Budgerigar Society. But
and where do they hire the hall?
I believe in Mudgeeraba, but it's
yeah, but I suppose my challenge is, I think we've all got community groups that pay for hall hire from the city, and it's just bizarre, So, but we are where we are. Councillor Balen-Lumsden?
Just the one I wanted to raise, Chair, was...
I thought you were going to say, I've just Googled the Budgerigar Society.
Got 27,000 members of the Budgerigar Society. No, I was...
Sounds about right, actually.
Page 426, Wildcare. They're just obviously they were 1% short of meeting the criteria for fully funded. I just know how much Wildcare does for the city and that they're listed on a lot of the city's communications as being the port of call. I was just surprised that we're not, I guess, fully funding what is ultimately a...
Yeah. $10,000 a year, in my recollection, and I agree with you.
Through the chair, so they are on a funding agreement. This is in addition to what they already received.
So I think their funding agreement is for like the medications and the materials and that kind of thing, whereas this one is for the training up of more volunteers and obviously just the amount of wildlife strikes and things we see. I know they're always short of volunteers and they're having to frantically run from Coomera to like Arundel to Mudgeeraba to backwards and forwards. So I just think having more volunteers in Wildcare is only a good thing. So I would have been keen to see it more funded than it is.
Yep. So I'm going to put an asterisk on that. The Albatross and Nippers, I'm which is 064. The project title is Building Competition.
And if I could answer that?
Yeah, if you could.
Well, not answer that, just going back to divisionally. Divisionally, I funded, is this Mermaid? Yeah, Albatross Nippers, and I also funded Mermaid Nobbies Miami Board Riders Club, and I also funded Gold Coast Lapidary Club. The amounts that are relatively, the amounts that are indicated there, they're all divisional, they all got LAW. What page is Albatross Nippers on, please, Chair?
426.
Second
But
from
what
the
is a
bottom.
building competition for a Nippers group? Or is it meant to be building completion?
This is our disability nippers. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Through you, Chair, to Matt, did the panel have a list of local area works donations prior to making their recommendation to this?
Through the chair, so the discretionary grants program or the divisional-based grants program was run consecutively to this program. So through the initial, I guess, evaluation or eligibility criteria assessment of all the applications, I think 20 were referred to the discretionary grants program. Some are borderline. I suppose it was just a judgment call that was made at that time. But the discretionary grants program isn't decided until after this is completed.
And unfortunately, the current structure doesn't allow for any input other than from officers, which is where that discretion falls apart.
So I know that you asked the question, Councillor Owen-Jones, but I didn't actually hear the response from Matt. How does the panel distinguish between what might be divisional, and I hear that you said they sent 20 across, but there's some in here that I would have questioned because there are groups within each of our areas that would have come to us and said, how should we apply? And if it was divisional, we would have said, you'll have to apply divisionally because you won't qualify for whole of city funding. So how did they determine what was and what wasn't?
So through the chair, the policy does provide some guidance in regard to that section of the eligibility criteria, in that a citywide grant is primarily for the benefit of more than one division. Where it's a surf club, for example, that's on a border of 2 divisions, it may service more than one division, whereas the converse being the discretionary grants program is to service one division primarily. Yes.
So how does something like the Glow Church, which is on page 430, for the Flava Games, whatever they are, it's really hard for us to, at this level, endorse everything here with no background, no idea, never heard of them, don't know who they are, don't know where they have their Flava Games.
And what's a flava?
A palaver.
Well, what, yeah, I mean, so the way it's set up at the moment, there's a panel that give a score based on certain criteria, and then we get this review that we don't really have
Correct.
sufficient information on to make an informed decision.
Councillor Pauline Young.
Thank you, and through the chair, also on the top of page 426, we've got Seed the Ground, funding request 16,647, which that's the recommended funding. Now, that's in Miami, and I believe it was either last week or the week before that Megan Scandon was down there having, I think, handed over $40,000 for their whole process down there. And I just, you know, for me to see, and I agree with Councillor Gates, we're not getting a councillor feedback on that, but for $40,000, to receive $40,000 from the state and now to get $16,000 from here, and I think it's 2 women that are running that, and it's in an area at the back of Marquetta, and I've been and had a look at it, and I think their work is great in what they're doing, but do I think it's $60,000 worth or $40,000 from the state? It could have been 47, and then 16,000 here. I just find that when we've got at the top of page 426, Seed the Ground, Delivery and Swap and Go program, a residential food organic waste collection. As far as I know at the moment, they've got coffee beans coming in and some other organic waste. Totally admire what they do, totally on board. I've given them LAW in the past. I support every event, but I think 16,000 here and 40,000 from the state in a period of a month or more is questionable. I don't know. This is Natalie.
Thank you,
Leewood.
Councillor Young. And I don't disagree with you. Councillor McDonald.
And I love
On
what she does.
page 426, the RSL Anzac Day dawn service. Now, you know, that's a citywide event, and I think that I don't know how the evaluation was done, but certainly I felt that with what I've seen here, that they met all the criteria. And I'm just wondering why that they only scored 75% when I think that if anyone's been to that service down there, they'll know that not only is it a local, but certainly Australia-wide and international. You know, they get international coverage, and I think they really should be entitled to that full 20,000 that they're asking.
Does anybody here contribute more than $10,000 to their RSL functions?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Councillor Gates, you.
$30,000.
Well, I appreciate that we all do that divisionally for our RSL events, but I tend to agree that I would prefer to see that, which does get national recognition. I'd rather see $10,000, for example, taken from Seed the Ground and just give them the 6 and fully fund the RSL. I mean, and it's a really awkward conversation to have now that we're presented with this and it looks like we're picking and choosing who we want to fund and who we don't. But that's why it would be helpful if we had been observers on the panel so that we can provide background to, and I know there were difficulties and I know there was an attempt to have us involved as we used to be, but it just makes it very awkward now. And so my view when I read this was for this year, so be it, because of the awkward nature of saying, well, we'd take this from there and that from somewhere else. It's not pleasant to do that, especially when there's been some sort of panel evaluation that has provided a criteria and a score that's relevant to what they thought was important. So it's just messy.
Councillor Patterson.
I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Gates on the process, and it is unfortunate that we're here. Regarding the dawn services, this one is different, but it's also different in that it already has significant funding and that it is funded without us. The official Anzac service of the Gold Coast, where the Mayor attends, is the original Southport, and I'm not asking for funds, but I allocate $30,000 out of LAW for that. This one is funded anyway. I don't see that, but I do agree with what Councillor Gates is saying. I would prefer to see actually the money go more to Mudgeeraba Show, where we know that they provide, they do their job, and they're not asking a huge amount for what they do. So, yeah, I don't know where we go.
Well, Councillor Matt, I won't call you a councillor.
Just through the chair, just in regards to the Currumbin RSL Anzac Day Dawn service, I'm aware that this contribution came about because MEGC are no longer funding their component as part of that transition. So there's a wider discussion to be had, particularly about Anzac Day services through this program, which we're hoping to sort of achieve in a future policy revision.
Widen that. Councillor McDonald's talked about making it 20,000. Do we have any views on what that figure, and this is where we're going to go, Councillor Patterson, we're going to get into a haggle. So
Can we please know what is remaining in the budget, what's left over at the outset?
Yeah, through the chair, I believe it's about $149,000. So it's on page 3 of the report, $149,020.
So there's 149,000 that the panel wasn't able to allocate.
Yes.
Right, perfect. Okay. So I've heard conversations about the surf club. I've heard conversations about the surf clubs, conversations about Currumbin, the Mudgeeraba show, clearly the Wildlife Australia. We've got maybe some editing along the way if we wanted to be that way inclined. And do we want to look at the list to see whether or not there are any that we maybe should question whether or not they are divisional? Councillors, do you want to look at the divisional ones?
If I could be excused, Mr Chairman, I'll leave you to it.
Thanks for your attendance. Cameron, permission granted. No, we're not going to deal with them at the moment. We're going to run down the page if we could. I think we are. So and what I'm after is a bit of. We're going to have a bit of give and take. Clearly, we're going to land in a position where nobody's going to be happy, but hopefully everybody will be happier. Sorry, Councillor Hamill.
Yeah, $149,000 unallocated. What would normally happen with that? Would it be redeployed into the rate base, or where does it go?
Through the chair, so a portion of that is re-provisions that would have went through today.
So hang on, what do you mean by that?
So that's from last financial year that's carried over. So there's a portion of that funding that is held aside for like emergency and extraordinary grant reasons, but it does sit in the whole bucket of funds, I suppose, not quarantined for that purpose.
So is it truly unallocated, or is it actually re-provisioned for other activities and we're about to?
How much was unallocated from this year's budget?
So we start with a notional $350,000 for the citywide grants program.
And how much is recommended?
319,000.
Right. So there's 20-odd thousand that is notionally unallocated from this year's, and there's 120 from prior years. So in regards to the conversation we're just going to have, we'll try our hardest not to allocate 140,000, and we need to have one eye on what future years might look like as well, because again, when you say I'm going to give somebody X, they're going to expect it the following year as well, and that impacts on the following year's allocations. Councillor Gates.
So I have a view, that we should allocate the $21,000 that was
at the very least
left over, and I think we perhaps might like to revise some of the amounts that were presented to us today.
Okay, so $30,000 for the Gold Coast show.
Mudgeeraba show.
The Mudgeeraba show. No, well, one.
Adjust that, that'll free about $50,000 that was otherwise allocated. If you want to do that.
So that's 5,000 that we've used of the 21.
Yep.
So we've got 16 left.
So I'm going to pause on the surf life saving because I think we'll return to those, because I think from memory last year they ended up being the beneficiary of what was left. So we're just going to go down the page. We're on 423. Oz Harvest and Animal Welfare were zeros. ARHG Foundation.
Was that event held last weekend?
Yeah, that's what I was wanting to ask.
And so is this amount for next year's event, or was it for the event that was held?
Through the chair, so there are a number of applications for events because this report was postponed because of the business being cancelled in the last round. There are a number of events that are annual events that we've kept their applications live for funding for next year, rather than an event that's happened in the past, because we can't reimburse organisations for projects that have already commenced.
So my question stands, this $10,000, is that for yesterday or for this past weekend's event?
No.
No.
Okay.
And how much
next
did
year.
they get last time? Instead of just having the event?
Through the chair, my understanding with that particular application is that this is the first year that they've run the event, and this is their first application to the city.
I'm not trying to be silly, but I'm quite
Okay,
sure.
so they've held an event in the last week without this funding, and this is an allocation of funding notionally for the next year. So
Do they know that? It occurs to me that this $75,000 request was made 4 months ago.
And they still went ahead with the event, so.
Through the chair, we've contacted the events or the projects that had a notional commencement date, which we have from their
So in
application.
contacting them, have you suggested to them that the officer's recommendation was $10,000?
Through the chair, this is a publicly available document.
That's not what I asked. So in contacting them, did you suggest to them that the officer's recommendation was going to be $10,000?
Correct, yes.
Right.
So they think, my gut feeling is that they made this application 4 months ago and they have proceeded with the event last week, keeping in mind that they've been informed that $10,000 is the likely outcome. That's what I would suggest if I was running a small community organisation that was running of an event for disability people. That's what
So I
I'd be
don't think
thinking.
we have the ability to amend it on the floor today because of those circumstances, but that's part of the problem that we have. And it's not your fault, Matt, I'm just saying that that's the challenge we have.
And given your commentary when we started going through revising this list, I think it needs to be highlighted that this is a one-off allocation until we get some better data about which to make our decision next year. So if that, I don't know, when this is revised, can the new document that is presented to full council highlight that this is a one-off allocation? I mean, I know it is anyway, but just so that they don't have an expectation that every year it will be $10,000. It may be if we get great feedback from the event that they held, but given it's the first event, it was a pretty hefty allocation for a first event that we have no data on.
Okay, so page 424, thank you, councillor Gates. Page 424, the JPs stay, humpback and high rises. Native plants, who doesn't like native plants? The Gold Coast Little Athletics Youth Branch, where are they based? Like, I mean, as in, aren't there only 4 or 5 geographically located little athletics? So there isn't a Gold Coast group that I was aware of.
Through the chair, I believe this regional group is based both at Ashmore and Pizzey Park. I can just double check that.
I think it's a big body that manage the regionals as opposed to the local little athletics.
Okay, so we, stop me if you want to change anything. Gold Coast Little Athletics, yes?
I think so.
Ocean Connect Citizen Science. Mermaid Nobbies, Miami Board Riders, Criticomp.
Really?
I think it's divisional.
I do too. I'd like to talk my groups out of funding, but I just think if we're being fair across the board, they got $1,500 from me at LAW, and then
So
I put
we got 2,000 back in the hole, back in the bucket. Agreed?
Yep.
Keeping Gold Coast water safe and saving lives, 1452.
How do they do that?
It's actually a incorporated association, but it's a separate foundation.
From that entity.
So what do they do, sorry?
I don't know the application.
Through the chair, so their proposal is to hold a CPR and water safety lessons day for the community to attend.
Where?
Royal Pines?
At the Nerang Aquatica Centre, through chair.
Do they lease it? I mean, is this associated with the other Belgravia that are the
Yes.
lessees of our pool?
Okay, so we're going
Yep.
to solve that by removing the 1452.
Yeah.
Hope starts here. Salty Souls. The Gold Coast Rose Society. Concussion Australia, Cancer Support Sisters, Gold Coast Lapidary Club.
We should give the Support Sisters more, if we can.
So the challenge they have is only 1,150 of the project.
Oh, right, was eligible. Fair enough. Thank you.
So the Lapidary Club, are you seeing that as being local? Have you supported them through your LAW?
Dollars in LAW.
Okay.
And I know they do, it's a great event and everything, but I think it's LAW.
No, the reality is it happens every year,
Yes,
this conversation. So, so 2,400 back in the box. Glenn, do you want to talk me through the Gold Coast Budgerigar Society hall hire?
There are no members of that association who live in my division. They host a national or a statewide Budgerigar event that attracts people from all over, and they have hosted it at Mudgeeraba Show Society before, but it's a national or statewide.
And here's the exciting thing: if it's national and people are coming, they can pay $2 rather than $3, or $3 rather than $5, and pay for their hall hire like every other group has to.
You're probably right. I'm not sure. I'm not a big Budgerigar person, but I would definitely not suggest it's divisional in any way. I have attended on one occasion in the last 10 years, and it was lots of people who were very excited about their birds from.
And that's exciting. But when I host the Southport Stamp Club, who meet on a regular basis at the Helensvale Community Centre, they pay for their hall hire, you know, and they attract people from all over southeast Queensland. So my view is $15.92 should go back into the pot. Does anybody disagree?
It's like a Surfers Paradise Mudgeeraba connection there.
Don't know what Surfers Paradise.
I was going to say.
I've been looking.
I thought that was going to be like some sort of trade deal going on. I got no.
So
These are all
Darren's going to bring me
silence
up
from the
to
Council
speed
for
with the
Surfers
Bird
Paradise.
Watchers Bar and how the Bird
Killing me,
Watchers
mate.
Bar hasn't been in
You've
Surfers
been looking for
Paradise.
these birds. Where are these birds?
The Gold Coast Table Tennis Association, the Gold Coast Organic Growers, the Gold Coast Veterans Golf Association. $2,340 to purchase equipment. 077. So Glenn, this committee is heading towards making a decision of reducing the Belgravia Foundation's request for 1452 based on Matt's advice that it was at Nerang, which is potentially a leased facility. Did you seek any advice from Hamish or anybody in that space, or did you want to make any comment?
So I got advice, which we're on the public
Yes,
record
please.
here. So I got advice saying that the Belgravia Foundation is a separately auspiced organisation, a separate incorporated association from any entity for which I've ever had any dealings or leased the facility. So Belgravia Leisure is the entity from whom I received swimming lessons. There's a existing declaration, but this applicant is a separate organisation, and I sought advice about that, and they are separate. They do operate, the foundation operate all over Australia, as I understand, and in this case, this program is being delivered at Nerang, but that's as much as I know is what's been said today. I know that the entity is a different, separate entity.
Okay.
And eligible for grants and like any charity.
Sorry, may I just ask through you? So the people who are running this would not be the same people that you dealt with, that there was a conflict consideration for before?
So Belgravia Foundation is a separate entity with different people. I don't know who runs the Belgravia Foundation.
So different individuals, not the same
Correct.
people?
But on this occasion, that foundation is hosting an event that Belgravia, or at a location that Belgravia Leisure manage, but that entity is a separate entity that are both the recipient of the grant and the hosting of the program. And I don't have enough knowledge to say anything else than the declaration about Belgravia Leisure is different than this entity, Belgravia Foundation. They are different. It's a different incorporated association.
But be advertised at the venue where there is...
My understanding is Belgravia Foundation do events all over Australia at different times, making application to local governments or other charitable outlets to run programs in places where there is community need. And Nerang isn't in my division, and I don't know about this program.
Okay, Councillor Gates.
Through you, Chair, just so that we're all not in breach, I only have that one concern. The information that you requested, was it from our city solicitor to find out whether or not today you should make a declaration?
The answer to your question is the question I asked
Of
was
whom?
not about whether I should make a declaration, because every time I've asked that question, they say that's a matter for you.
Who did you ask? Was it you? So did you ask our city solicitor, or did you ask the foundation?
No, I investigated the foundation and I asked Belgravia Leisure if the foundation was the same entity or not. So there's a contact at Belgravia Leisure and I asked them, is the foundation you guys or is it not? They said, no, it's a separately incorporated association that is managing projects all over Australia, and on this occasion, I don't know about this application, but that's what they said to me about what Belgravia Foundation was. Previously, I have asked the city solicitor, and it was actually probably Cherie. I haven't asked them about this particular one, but they said that when the entity is totally different, there is no need to make a declaration, but answer the questions that are posed to you by your colleagues, which is what I'm doing.
Thank you. Thank you. So I don't think anything my personal view is I don't think you've done or said anything today that's influenced the room in regards to us reducing their application, but it may very well be between now and council you just seek clarification from Hamish.
So a committee in general, I can't vote on this committee,
Yeah, I
but
get
a
it.
committee in general can raise a reasonable suspicion, and there is a pre-prepared declaration in relation to Belgravia, which if you would like me to do, I will, but I'm happy to do that.
So I don't need that, but
It is a separate entity, but that's okay. I'm happy to make the declaration if Councillor Gates would have greater confidence by raising that.
I just wondered where you got your advice. That's all.
Happy to deal with however the committee would like to deal with it.
Okay. So, committee, are we comfortable to move back to the Gold Coast Organic Growers, which was 077, and the question was, what was it in relation to?
Through the chair, it's for the purchase of a laptop.
At the bottom of page 425.
organically.
Okay. Page 426, seed the ground. So I think we heard from Councillor Young. Did you have a suggestion?
That the $10,000 should go to, as in what Councillor Gates said, go to
Okay.
the
So
Currumbin
before we
RSL.
reallocate it,
I'm happy for them to get 6,647 if that's what they're doing, but again, I think it's a local thing. Councillor Tozer, you've experienced that. I mean, they do good work, but
I visited this entity at Burleigh Anglican. They invited me to a thing, and my observation of them is that they are starting to expand organic waste collection and FOGO type activities, including community gardening at lots of locations across the city. It wouldn't surprise me if over the next 2 or 3 years we see a number of community locations engage this entity to do this sort of stuff.
And they've recently received 40,000.
I haven't provided, they're not doing anything in Mudgeeraba, but I went to visit them in Burleigh Anglican because I'm interested in community gardening.
Provided money for them.
yeah, Councillor.
Okay. So, councillors.
I quite like them, to be honest.
Councillor Patterson.
So I've just got a question through you to Matt. So when I asked before about another one and you said, well, we took into account that they had received funding from other areas. So did you do that with this one as well, or was that different?
Through the chair, are you referring to the Anzac Day?
No, I'm referring to intergenerational, and you said, oh, they'd received money from the mayors, so we've reduced their rating effectively because of that. So did you do the same one with this, who's received money from the state government, Councillor Young and Councillor McDonald?
Through the chair, no. So it was a little bit different with the other one in that as part of the evaluation panel, we have someone from the Office of the Mayor sitting in as a scoring member, and so there are a couple throughout the comments where we do talk to sort of co-funding with the Office of the Mayor for particular events. Other funding sources aren't a question or a scoring mechanism. It's just as part of the moderation evaluation, so it's not part of the structured scoring.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify that the funding that I gave them wasn't this year. But where is this funding for? Are they setting up areas throughout the Gold Coast?
Look, they asked for it in this
Yeah.
So the question, Matt, is what's the funding for? Where is the funding for?
Yeah.
22, 23, 054.
So through the chair, my understanding from their application is that the funding is towards the swap and go service, so anyone in the community can access it. They don't mention the location, but I assume it is probably the one location where you can swap and go, but anyone can access it at the moment.
Councillor Hamill.
Mr Chair, I'm aware that they're starting to do some stuff at my end of the city, so given that and the information I've heard, can we just wrap them at 5,000 and move on?
Yep, sounds like a good idea. Anybody disagree with 5,000? We're on our way. Perry Cross, Southport Yacht Club, 10 cent Tom. Yeah, I like him too, but that's 68,000 pieces of bottles that he can collect. So, for example, if we could do a deal where the Mudgeeraba Show Society got an extra $5,000 and invited Tom to come and pick up the 10 cent bottles, if he picked up 68,000 bottles, he'd be on his way.
Anzac Day, Southport.
The allocation to 10 cent Tom contingent on structured partnership with the Mudgeeraba Show Society. That sounds very reasonable and fair, and if we were to allocate some money to 10 cent Tom, I think it'd be great to see a partnership with Mudgeeraba Show Society. I think Mudgeeraba Show Society would be open to that.
Councillor Hamill.
Given the information I've heard, can we take it down to 3,000 flat and move on?
3,000?
Well, I'm curious about. I'm curious about any funding for it, and I'm not saying not, but I don't understand why. So, what is it for?
To purchase more wheelie bins and padlocks.
It's a lot of padlocks.
That's a lot of really bins and padlocks.
And it's something that he'd so easy get from donations.
Can I just ask a question? Through our contractor with the garbage collection, what do they do,
The old bins.
do they do any donations of wheelie bins to organisations?
It's
Why
not
are we
JJ
all looking
Richards.
at Mark?
It's not JJ Richards. Their bin deliveries through Sulo. And Sulo produced them, so he would buy them from them.
But that retail at Bunnings are like $110 or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Depends what size.
Councillor Taylor.
I just want to raise with Tom, 10 cent Tom, that he does supply to our venue at the moment, and I have sponsored him previously, so I didn't know whether that was something to raise concern, but I just want to bring it to the...
Have you sponsored him or have you sponsored 10 Cent Tom, the Incorporated Association?
I can't answer that.
Yeah, and that's the challenge. So, $2,000? Sorry, Councillor Patterson?
No, it's all right, I'll leave it.
$2,000, and let's encourage him to strike a partnership through Councillor Tozer's office with the Mudgeeraba Show Society. The Nerang Mountain Bike Club, 10,000, gone. Sorry, I was just trying to get you back in the conversation, Councillor Tozer. You worked so hard last year for that. Right, Wildcare, fund to $9,500. Matt, did you get that? Celebrating Gold Coast diverse seniors with disabilities. Currumbin, where are we moving Currumbin to? That accelerated really quickly. Well, we may as well do it at Coomera, Mount Tambourine. I have to pay for closing the road. Yeah, don't we all? So, Councillor McDonald's pitching for 20,000.
I'm happy to support that.
So 20,000? And 20,000, and Matt,
The RSL guys tell me that they have a huge amount of money and that they don't have an issue with money. So why are we giving it to them? The RSL guys say that.
yep, councillor
Mr Chair,
McConnell.
the Currumbin RSL put a lot of money in to this event. This is a citywide event that goes worldwide. And, you know, we've got, I don't know, about 40,000 people that attend. It costs a lot to run this event, which the RSL fund themselves. They don't get money from other areas.
So my view is that we should advise them that it's a one-off increase to 20,000, and somehow this organisation needs to have a conversation with, I don't know, Major Events Gold Coast about what a major event actually looks like. So,
Good luck. I mean, sorry.
And I think that's relevant, that would do what we've just done, given Major Events has stepped back from it without our knowledge.
right. Okay, so the Indian Diwali Festival.
Mr Chair, didn't they cancel their event because of wet
No,
weather?
they've just had it. They had it on last Friday.
Did they reschedule it, did they?
Councillor Barton Lumsden, you attended.
Night as the Churn Park Festival, so I did not attend it. I just know it was the same night.
So this wasn't the Dreamworld one?
Am I not looking at, I'm on there, this was going to be at Hodder, wasn't it?
It was at Broadwater Park.
Yeah, this is the GoPio event, so this is the one that was this Saturday just been at the Broadwater Parklands.
I think it's worth having the money. It's
Yeah.
a city cultural event. It's good.
I do know it has caused kerfuffle between the various Diwali events and one getting funding and others
That's right.
being refused funding.
There's a few of them,
so that's what it is.
give to one and we don't give to another, it's a bit tricky.
So can we confirm which one that is? Because I was just looking at the one that was going to be at Hodder, which they cancelled.
So this one is GoPio. The one at Dreamworld is the Indian community of Gold Coast.
I don't know that one.
I don't know the one.
Know about the Dreamworld one?
The state MP for the area attended.
Sandy.
Oh, I was talking about Mark Boothman. Sam was also there.
Sam's everywhere.
So this is for funding for just to clarify, this is funding for an event that has already been.
It will have gone.
It will go towards next year's, is what Matt said.
Okay, are we in or out for 10 grand?
Is it? It says 2022.
Retrospectively give it under the policy.
I'm only under the project title. It says 2022.
Albatross Snippers.
The chair, their base is in Nobbies, but they also go to Palm Beach, they go to Mermaid, they go to...
I think we all said yes.
Oh, good. Sorry, thank you.
Surf Life Saving, we're going to come back to. So Vassar Gold Coast.
That's a Gold Coast is a large
Is the Samoan. I actually went to that. So they had a couple of thousand people there. Destiny Family and Community Services. Yep, we're almost there, Councillor Gates, only got 5 pages to go. But it's an efficient system, Matt, and we thank you. Cancer Council of Queensland Gold Coast Relay for Life. 055. Okay, to the council that keeps on saying love it to everything, all right, we've got to make decisions. We all love everything, but every now and then we've got to make some decisions. So we're at Cancer Council Queensland Gold Coast Relay for Life, asking where it is because inevitably they ask for divisional contributions and they receive it.
Yeah, I'm doing something at Griffith University this Saturday with them. I think that must be it.
Matt, 055. So there's at least 2. Griffith?
Through the chair, yeah, Griffith University. So this will be for, I believe, next year's event because this is one that is scheduled for the 15th, which is prior to a council decision.
Thank you for your attendance and your spirited bidding.
So through the chair, it goes back to the primary purpose of the program in that it's a project which can be defined as event expenditure for equipment and those sorts of things that benefits more than one division. And so I guess it's the nitty-gritty of it all where we have to determine what's in, what's out at the beginning. And this was one that the panel decided benefited more than one division.
Oh, it wasn't that. It was just more a general comment that we seem to be funding a lot of events and a lot of cultural events that it's nearly like they need a separate program so that we can get a bit of disparity between what are events that become annual things and what are actual one-off purchases to help groups.
Okay. Leagueability, Waitangi Day, the Bangladesh Association, New Beginnings, Gold Coast Youth Marine Conservation Project, the Lions Club of Robina for the National Convention, Life Flight Foundation first, sorry? Well, I think it's for their national convention. He would ask for permission to leave first. Life Flight Foundation, New Life Community Care, the Australian Chinese Women's Federation, Learning Australian Culture. Every year we're here. My Community Legal Centre. Totally.
Yeah, so I'd want to double what?
10?
Yeah.
12?
Go 20. I'd give them what they asked for.
Okay, but we also need to manage their expectations in terms of future years. How do we feel about $12,500?
That's fine.
15.
How do we feel about $12,000? How do we feel about $11,500?
12 and a half.
20.
12 and a half.
This is My Community Legal, isn't it?
Okay.
Okay.
12 and a
Where
half.
are we at?
12 and a half.
15.
15.
15.
Where are you?
I'm with the one underneath.
No, where are you?
12 and a half.
Okay, so we've got more 12 and a halves than we've got 15s.
No, we don't.
Okay, all in favour of 12 and a half?
Far out.
All in favour of 15? Okay, I'll cast it and it's 12 and a half.
I want that count again.
Hearts of Purple. What's that, sorry? Yeah, no, where is it?
Fasting.
Yeah.
Wasn't it 3, 4?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 council committee members.
1, 2, 3, 4 for 12.
Yeah, and 1, 2, 3, 4 for 15.
Okay, fair enough.
Yep.
Okay. 13,500. All in favour of 13,500? For the frickin' My Community Legal. Well, I was just trying to reach consensus.
Fine. If the vote's won, go you 12.5.
$250 short of halfway.
$13,500. All in
Going
favour?
once.
Yeah, done. Thank you for your input. Right, Hearts of Purple.
The domestic violence charity.
Yep. Gold Coast Hinterland Museum, anti-ice campaign. So, Councillor Patterson, you had views. What were your thoughts?
I was just curious as to why they thought. I don't know. Anyway, what is the community art therapy, may I ask? For 041.
So we're going to come to a point shortly where we're going to have an existing amount in the bucket, and most likely it's going to turn up to being divided equally between the two branches of the Surfers Paradise, the Surf Lifesaving, right? So I think the question here for the community art therapy for the anti-ice campaign is, are we in for some or are we in for none? All right, and we've had to be tough all the way through today, and where are we at?
I'm in for some.
In for the allocation that's recommended.
Okay, so I've got a 1,500 from a committee member here.
I'll go 1,500.
1,500. Yes. Thank you. Bats. No to partial funding. So they actually said they didn't want partial funding. Baby Gives Back, Paddle Queensland, Gold Coast Theatre Alliance, Surfers Paradise Anglican Crisis Care, Gold Coast Fashion Project, Life Ed.
Now, sorry.
Yo.
So Paradise Anglican Crisis Care,
Yep.
again, effectively a community art therapy program. I'd be far more inclined to give it a higher percentage than I was the other group.
Did you want to give them $1,500 so they get the same as the
Yep.
the ICE?
Let's do that.
Done. Life Ed Queensland. Cancer. Yes, please.
Life Ed Queensland moving into the Albert Waterways brand new centre where they don't actually have to do any of the maintenance and stuff like that. It's coming back through the city and they've got a brand new event and they're not on, correct me if I'm wrong, and I've got it, but having had the gentleman in my office who then went off and did citywide media on it without running stuff back through here saying that Life Ed was going into this new centre and the story read like they were funding the whole thing when the city's actually doing a $15 million upgrade to that whole precinct. They're moving back into new facilities with everything. I just think, I don't know. Is it?
They have a sense of ownership of that building.
Yep, all good input. What would you like the amount to be?
I think if other groups, 2,500.
Mark, do you agree with that? Sold. Cancer patients, Oz Harvest No, Lily Pilly Training and Education.
Which is?
So 004, Matt. Teenage Grief. CFS.
I'd actually, even with teenage grief, take it up to 2.5 or something.
2.5, done. Teenage Grief, 2.5. Youth Music Venture. Who?
The Youth Music Venture guys.
Have they gone to divisions for funding?
When I said the low scoring, it makes me think, how come it's a low score? And is there things that we can provide to that organisation to help them have a higher scoring application?
Through the chair. So for the balance of the ones that we're going to be going through shortly, generally it's to do with the reach or the value for money component. So if they're only reaching a dozen students or a dozen group members, that's generally where, 60% is still quite a good score. It's above the 50% threshold to be eligible. It's generally to do with the reach and the value for money component versus what they're actually delivering.
So I'm confused because the Gold Coast Regional Basketball Association is one of the largest sporting membership organisations in the city. I've met with them twice over the last 2 months to talk about their strategic planning stuff and some of the issues with their displacement at council venues. And I just, that's what I'm a bit confused about. Like a low scoring application, that can't possibly be reach. Because, I was there last night playing basketball, and there's basketballs everywhere. And I'm not a junior, but the program is with Gold Coast Regional Basketball Association is I think the largest association in Queensland.
Would you like to go to the bathroom?
So I'm trying to work out how low scoring becomes low scoring.
Okay, we're going to get there in a moment. We're a page and a half away. Councillor Hamill.
I'd like to propose everything under 60% that we just don't worry about because they're all massive amounts of money, and with only $500, they're not going to run them anyway. I get the idea of trying to give a little bit to everybody, but I just think that's nearly an insult to even do 500.
Thank you. So we're not doing anything more. Do we agree that we've reached the bottom?
No.
So roughly how much do we have left in the tin?
May I, please?
Yes, please.
So I just got the article for Seed the Ground, they got $49,000 from the state government.
Right, and I
So,
think we
allocated
talked.
5, I don't know whether we actually, and don't get me wrong, I think they do really good work, but they're at the very early stages and they're starting to branch out. I think 50,000 from the state government, so 49, and the money that they've had from Councillor McDonald and myself should be enough to drive things forward.
Councillor Gates.
Thank you. And I would like to agree with what Councillor Hamill has proposed, except for Gold Coast Regional Basketball Association, as mentioned by Councillor Tozer. I would like to support their funding at the level of their request.
$4,032?
Correct.
Okay, and can I ask, where are we going to land with Seed the Ground?
They got
We landed at
49,000.
0.
Who's happy with 5,000? 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000, 2,000? Seed the Ground.
I wonder if there might be a way they could achieve their goals through stock of water and waste as part of that FOGO program.
Yes.
Yep. So to me, there's a business unit of our organisation that does things differently, and maybe that's a way that they could strike a partnership.
Very good idea. And my thoughts are, Chair, if you would indulge me, is that if they hadn't got 49,000 for the state government and they were struggling to go forward with their program, but to get $49,000 only a couple of weeks ago, when we've got some of these groups here, and not just Surf Lifesaving, but like with the basketball and like with a few of those others, I actually think that there's groups that are doing good work and don't necessarily have either the green feel or the sustainability beyond things like that. But they're doing incredibly good community work. So just a thought.
So councillors at 0 for this year? Thanks. Right. Okay. Matt, do you have any idea about what might be left from this year's budget without counting the carry forward?
Yes, so it's ballpark $37,000. So with the additions and deductions from the original $31,000 balance, it lands at about $37,000.
Okay, so councillors, so we have the Surf Lifesaving, which I think we said it last year and we'll say it again this year. We think it's important. So do you want to split the 37 or do you want to dip in a little bit into the carry forward amount that hasn't been allocated? Right. 50 each? Are we all comfortable with 50 each? Is anybody uncomfortable? Excellent, thank you. Did you get that, Matt? Right. Councillor Hamill.
Are we, is this arrangement and how this works changing before next year?
Unfortunately, it's not, because our friends in the state government have legislation which makes it incredibly difficult for us to actually do our job in a way other than how we've done it today.
Understood. So would there be anything stopping us from doing what we just did as a separate workshop and then bringing in the final recommendation?
Yeah, there is.
Done in open session.
Oh.
So, which is extraordinary.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, that's the world we are currently in. But if any of the officers that were on the panel would like to review the 3 hours of tape to get a bit of a vibe, they would be welcome to do that. As detailed in attachment 1 is probably a little bit redundant at the moment, as amended. Yeah. And so, Matt, if there was a way for you to quickly edit those 4 or 5 pages and maybe circulate them, and then if any councillors have a different recollection of what we've achieved than what Matt's documented, please let me know. Councillors, are we happy with that recommendation? Is anybody unhappy? Excellent. So Councillor Gates is going to move it and Councillor Taylor is going to second it. And Councillor Gates?
Well, I'm simply going to love and respect all of the groups, particularly those who volunteer in our city. I think we've made that very clear with Surf Lifesaving today, where we know that the volunteers for Surf Lifesaving provide such a vital service to the city, and our beaches are our heartland. I think with all of the input from the various representatives today, that we've arrived at a very good place and a fairer place, especially in regard to the RSL and the Currumbin service. I hope that we can slightly refine the process moving forward. I understand that the legislation requires that we went through this in the way that we did in open session today. It's not any of our preference to cause insult to anyone by making changes, but they are done with the very best of intention of each and every one of us. So thank you to everyone who applied and for their input into this fantastic city.
Thank you. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Councillors, would anybody like to be brave enough to suggest they have a general business item? At 12:39, the meeting was closed.